Going into the playoffs, Furia has one of the highest win rates on T side I've ever seen at a major, including Stockholm 2021, where Na'Vi went on that undefeated run. Going into the playoffs, they only had a 60% win rate on T side. Really, really strong, in fact, but not nearly as strong as Furia's 70%. Although they are overshadowed by the likes of Falcons when you actually look at the last 3 months, Falcons fall off when you put them against stronger and stronger competition. So if you show top 5 only, Furia actually have a higher win rate than Falcons, despite having, I would say, objectively a slightly weaker roster. Although that being said, Fallen's fragging and Yuri's fragging are nothing to scoff at, and you could maybe make an argument. I just think you put them against the Vitality or a Falcons, it's not their individual prowess that's gonna frag those teams off the server. I think they do so many things right when it comes to the T sides. So we're gonna look at 2 maps where the T side was amazing. One of the main things they're doing right recently is they're winning all of the low number situations. That's how you get a 70% win rate. If we're being honest here, guys, you do need to win some disadvantageous fights. You need to win some gunfights you're not supposed to be winning if you want to have a 70% win rate on T side. But the way they work together is what facilitates a lot of that. The way they're always in position to be ensuring trades, and not only that, they're not necessarily ensuring trades right off the back of each other with 2 players side by side. Oftentimes they're putting pressure on a player to be focused on 2 positions at the same time, or drawing a rotate over in a certain direction and using that pressure to catch a different player that is trying to support his teammate. And I think Furia does that better than any team out there at the moment, especially when it comes down to the lurk plays coming out of either Yakindar or Kacerado. Obviously, Yakindar isn't known as a lurker, but the way entry fragging works is oftentimes you get an aggressive player into a position and then he turns into the lurker sometimes, or he has to take map control on his own. And Yakindar, known for being a bit of a liability doing that on Liquid, I think he's really found his place on Furia. He's found comfort, and he knows when to go for the aggressive plays and when to play a little bit more passive. And that goes for the entirety of Furia. One of the things that I really do like that they do is this type of play. They're on an anti-eco here, or an anti-force buy, and they're still willing to go for hyper-aggressive, fast plays. It's going to draw out utility, and it's going to throw a wrench into the works of the way G2 want to play this round out. I think this is a really underrated aspect of anti-ecos, and when it goes wrong, it does look really bad. When you get counter-pushed down banana and it just goes terribly for you. But the reality is, if you don't throw those plays in once in a while, you simply give a little too much space to the opponents to do what they want to do, to line up a double nade bottom banana, to hold onto their utility a little longer. And the reality is, when you have a force buy or you have a half buy, you're trying to save but actually get something done, you're not going to have a full belt of utility. So you have to make your decision on where you want to be using that utility. And if Furia have these aggressive plays in their back pocket where they can go for plays that are a little bit risky, they force teams to make that decision. Are you going to be holding that utility for the late round, or are you going to be dumping it, worried about a Mac 10 running straight up banana on an anti-eco? Right? That's not something you necessarily think of. And when I go all the way back, if you look at Astralis, Prime Astralis, I think that's one of the most underrated aspects of that team. They were a really coordinated team. They had all of these really coordinated plays. They would be able to choke you out of a game by playing perfect CS, but they also had Dupree and Glaive that at times could get really hyper aggressive and make off the wall plays that opponents would then have to respect and worry about, that would elevate the effectiveness of their other plays as well. So we go into the first gun round. Interestingly, the anti-eco they played in a more standard fashion actually turned out to be the one that was the least effective, right? That's the one that got a little bit more sketchy. Going into the first gun round, they play very heavy on banana. I think Fallen still has the really effective ability as like one of these more old school IGLs to formulate a half really, really effectively and use that to really force opponents to make bad decisions with their utilities and their timings. By the way, one of the things Furia does, they give a lot of ability for players to make their own decisions and have agency on their own. Yakindar notices this molly in boiler. I think he uses that information, calls back, there's a molly boiler, Sunpius might be peeking mid, Sunpius peeks in, Molodoy is completely ready for it, although Molodoy clearly expected that was a very good possibility that Sunpius might go for that type of aggressive peek down mid. Off of that, Fallen smoke towards Arch, and they catch the timing before the CTs can actually go for the re-aggress into mid. You know, as CTs, you're waiting for the smoke to go down, and then you're considering re-aggressing into mid as that goes down, but before that smoke goes down, they're already regrouping towards top banana. banana. They threw the perfect counter utility to prevent the aggressive clear towards top banana. And then they have this very slow play, the smoke towards CT, very little utility with it. They have KSCERATO making his way forward with support. He's probing in with utility support, but not so much utility that it shows that there's 2, 3, 4 players there. Someone easily could be throwing that utility as a solo player on that side of the map. Instead, they make it look like one player could be throwing that utility while KSCERATO takes what is a fairly advantageous engagement. And the CTs have to consider, am I going to throw counter utility? Well, then if they're throwing it as a fake, that counter utility is basically wasted. Instead, they have a player walk right out into KSCERATO. KSCERATO gets the easy kill, and Yekindar is still here on the other side of the map, lurking towards Boiler, not taking too much space. I think Yekindar has been really impressive on this roster, just in his ability to take space without getting punished for it. He's so often making an aggressive play at the right moment, and sometimes it's a little pushing the edge of what might be considered over aggressive, but he never flaunts it. He never goes like crazy over aggressive, and his team knows how to play off of it. This is one of the keys that I think super teams really struggle with, because they have so many players that all have the same idea of how they want to play out a round, where Furia, their players know their role in the system. So when it comes down to it, they can actually have a lot of agency in the way they make decisions and constantly be on the same page as to what their win condition in a round is and when to swap between, let's play for our win condition, let's try and find a way to win this round, or sometimes you swap from that when you're in an advantageous position, you swap to, how do we not lose this round? And I think Furia are constantly on the same page when it comes to swapping between those two different ideologies on how to play out a round. But again, we have an anti-force buy, I'd say, at this point, because it's 4 rounds lost in a row. You can get quite a bit of a buy as the CTs. They're going for another. It's a contact play up middle. This is another play where you could just walk into a stag. You have to accept that things could go badly for you. But at the same time, if you don't show these types of plays, if you don't show that it's possible, you're just going to be vulnerable to a lot of kind of like late round, hold on to your utility style plays. What a lot of teams have realized recently as in the last several years, mid-round aggressions are really effective, because you want to catch your opponents when you're on a force buy, you want to catch your opponents as they're transitioning. They might start the round playing super passive, holding for every single push and being completely safe to it. Then they're going to have to move into a style of exec and be ready to actually hit a bomb site, and that's when you want to catch them instead of just doing very fast early plays. And when you have these different looks, rather than just playing super default standard anti-eco style CS, you force them to make decisions on how they want to be using that utility, how they want to be making these plays. But here, they're not giving Malbs anything. I think this is a good game plan against a G2 that likes to get aggressive. They have Malbs and Matisse, and I think both of them like the aggressive plays. They like to take aim duels. Furia is trying to make sure they have very little ability to do so without running into an Opper or running into really effective counter utility. They throw the double molly towards top banana to deny them right away at the very start. I think G2 actually do a good job holding this on banana. They use quite a bit of utility themselves, but so do Furia, and they still have the smoke left over from Matisse ready to throw it back a little bit later. They have the rotate over. You end up in a pretty solid spot for G2, but that wasn't the only plan for Furia, because they had Yekindar, and he has to be doing this. He has to be clearing angles on his own. He has to be taking risks and understanding, you know, things could go wrong, and if they do go wrong, they're going to have a plan B. They're going to have an idea of how they can actually transition this round into a potentially winnable spot. In this case, they get smoked off. Yekindar gets free control towards apartments very often. If they're pressuring banana, it's hard to pressure and play active on banana and towards mid and towards apartments at the same time. There's likely to be a weak spot there. But after they get smoked off, they consider the rotate back around. They're constantly in motion, so they have a lot of options on the table. Yekindar gets flashed into mid. They have the plan B ready. And again, they're going to look at a specific timing. Yekindar gets flashed in. I really like it. It seemed like he was considering this chase. Like he thought about, actually, I have the ability. I could consider chasing Sunpius here, but I'm not going to. As in, he has that option on the table if he feels like he has a play there. I feel like some IGLs, you can tell they're a little bit too specific about what they need their players doing, where they don't have freedom to make the decision that they feel is right. And in a game like CS where things happen so quickly, you need your players to have freedom. I think Yekindar had the freedom if he wanted to. He decided not to, smoked off towards Arch. And look, again, you have Furia running into a bomb site with only one CT. Now, they don't clear it, which is a bit of a problem. They think, apparently they think their fake was more effective than it actually was. However, they do managed to take the bomb site. They just can't plant the bomb. I think that was another, I mean, that's a round where Furia, mission success. The strat they ran was really effective. They rotated players off. They just didn't clear the bomb site for whatever reason, thinking maybe it was more effective. Maybe someone communicated some footsteps and didn't realize that there was an extra player there, what have you. This is a round where I actually think Furia, they're going to win this round, but they get the worst of it, because I actually think this play from Hunter was really effective. He gets himself into a good spot. Fallen just hits a very nice shot. I'm not sure Fallen's 1.2 nearly rating in this event is sustainable throughout the playoffs, but then they go for the fast pop-up lane. Sunpius, should be hitting that shot. I mean, I think that's 2 kills that G2 gets more often than they don't. I like the idea coming out of G2 trying to chase Sunpius down, but they did leave the opening for him to get taken down, or for him to get a kill and actually shut down the push. So even when things go really badly, you got the double kill from Matisse, Yuri maintains that pressure, and for that reason, Malbs wants to try and support. He actually walks directly into Molodoy. Yuri stays in position, doesn't quite manage to get that kill. I think that's more or less a 50-50 in that position, and you end up in a 2v2 where Molodoy realizes the aggression might be coming out, but Matisse thinks better of it, realizing they've got the bomb with them. But you've got Cacerado that looped his way back around through apartments and puts himself in a pretty solid position here. They're waiting for the aggressive play to come out. Unfortunately, with the bomb down, it's really Furia that have to make the play. They have the onus is on them to actually get something done, and that means Cacerado is going to have to play likely off of contact. Is Molodoy going to get the spam? Oh my god. Molodoy gets the spam, and because they waited that time where Molodoy was the only player on the map making any presence, Cacerado could have been anywhere, and he knows that, so he knows that off of that timing he can peek out apartments, and it's likely that a player in sight is looking to buy a little bit of time to actually check his flank before he actually deals with Molodoy, who couldn't be peeking him yet. Really well played by Furia, and breaking this down, I mean, the reality is Furia has their players that are all performing at a very high level, and they're winning some rounds they shouldn't be winning, but I think strategically they're also putting themselves in very good positions to win rounds consistently without their players needing to make a lot of heroic maneuvers. And I really like, personally, the way they play their anti-ecos. Feels very sustainable, and it feels a little bit different than I see a lot of other teams play their anti-ecos, where sometimes it becomes a little bit obvious as to the plays they're going to be going for, and they can start getting counter-stratted. I think that actually happened to Vitality at the beginning of the second season, or the end of the first season, or the beginning of the second season of this year, where teams started to get an idea, hey, Vitality, they don't have all of the variety in the world when it comes to their anti-ecos. Let's try and catch them off with some things we know they're going to do, and it worked out for teams.